So today I just want to talk about certain discourse I see pop up every now and then, which is translation/localization discourse. I would have talked about this sooner, but I actually want to enjoy my Christmas first. While normally it pops up after a dogshit translation makes the rounds on a certain app we all know and love, people make fun of it, some people defend it, it dies down in a week or two, and then the cycle repeats in a couple of months. However, this time is unique as recently there's been news of Japanese companies that in order to combat piracy have resorted to firing translators that kicked off this drama. It seemingly started with this post where the Ancient Magus Bride manga states that they are using AI along with professional translators, as unofficial translators have apparently been causing serious harm to the manga industry. At first glance, there doesn't appear to be much going on with this. Obviously, I feel bad for all the people who are going to lose their jobs and I hope the best for them in their next chapter in life. Pretty simple event, right? Well, you would be wrong because it occurred on the social media site formerly known as Twitter, and boy oh boy, did it spread like wildfire with the side of hot takes. Now, before I continue along, I just want to get one thing clear about what I think about translators and localizers. While I believe that most of them are just everyday people trying to do their best at their jobs, there is a very loud minority that just can't seem to properly translate the text. I'm not even talking about minor grammar tweaks or hard to translate word. It's completely different topics that are mentioned in a revised version that isn't even close to what was there before. They bastardize and ruin the overall quality of the translation by inserting unnecessary dialogue that isn't even remotely similar to the original text. You would think they would feel bad about not being able to do their jobs properly, but no! They also have massive egos and think their shit doesn't stink, which we will talk about right now. First off, we got this tweet that reads, "Anyways, it's clear that woke localizers is based on maybe 5% actual translation errors, generous, and 95% right-wingers pushing a fascist agenda of erasure. Liberalism exists in Japan. Feminism exists in Japan. Queerness exists in Japan. Deal with it." Already out the gate and we got a bad faith argument. Very weird how you're trying to call people right-wing over wanting people to do their actual jobs of translating and not to incorporate your weird internet terminology into shows. When you are drastically changing the original text to something that doesn't even resemble the original, you obviously suck as a translator and shouldn't work if you can't perform. Your job is to take things from one language and put them into another language, not put your own little unique spin on it. I don't even know why we're having this convo. If you can't properly do your job, you obviously shouldn't be able to work. Just look at this for example. How do you go from who knows to property theft? Or inserting mansplaining of all things into a text that doesn't even talk about it to start with? The crazy part is that there's so many more examples that I can show and I will show later on. At this rate, we are actually better off with AI translations. I would rather get stilted messages that at least are similar to the original than whatever these are. This dude also had the little X exists in Japan speech at the end to completely encapsulate the smug Twitter user mentality. Yeah, already mentioned right-wingers, now time to talk about gays and women. Yeah, now that's a banger. I'm guaranteed to win this argument for sure. I think it's pretty sad how this dude spent his Christmas Eve and probably Christmas raging at randos on Twitter instead of spending time with family or friends chilling and having fun. Totally not mad energy when you're frothing at the mouth online typing shit like this, basically saying everyone who disagrees with me is a racist, sexist homophobe who is 13 or something. Yeah bro, trust that everyone who's mocking me right now is a bad person and I totally didn't post cringe by the way. If you ever get this mad online at this point, you should probably log off and take the day off from social media because you ain't built for this shit, son. On an unrelated note, if anyone dislikes me or my content, you are a racist, pedo, Nazi, zoophile, and to prove me wrong, you must like and sub right now. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Also, fun fact about this dude, he ran an account called Unseen Japan, and a couple years back, he tried to get a blood drive in Japan shut down because the character they were using to promo it had big tits. And then he proceeded to get laughed at on national television because ruining a blood drive over petty reasons sucks, obviously. So overall, a very normal Twitter user. The next tweet we're going to look at says, "It's very funny / depressing how the whole evil woke localizers of Japanese media thing is just Gamergate again." My first reaction upon reading this was to get whiplash from hearing Gamergate mentioned. You know, that thing that happened 10 years ago that doesn't even matter now. It's practically an internet falso at this point. Yeah, apparently people are still hooked on that shit like it's crack cocaine. You need to log off and de-internet yourself. Actually, you need to be shipped off to work in the mines for that post. How about translators / localizers actually do their jobs properly and you stop bringing up dead events into unrelated topics? It's actually astounding the lengths people will go to deny the fact that there is extensive proof that translators / localizers will go in order to ruin the original message of the text. Looking at all these butchered translations / localizations, it's crazy how they are able to openly fuck up this bad and still keep their jobs. None of these translated messages are even close to resembling the original. If this was any other job, they would be gone by now. Imagine you pay someone to do something and they give you something completely different than what you asked on purpose and then act all smug about it. Like when I was working in an internship, I had to follow my boss's instructions and actually do the job I was hired to do. Imagine if one day my boss was like, "Hey, I need you to fill out this report." Actually, I want to run some tests on this microprocessor just because I want to, and fuck you. You're fired. Get out. If you can't do your job properly, then pipe down or step out and let someone else handle it. I don't know why this is such a hard concept to grasp with translation. All I'm gonna say is when these people eventually get fired from their jobs and end up in fast food or retail, they're gonna get fired from that too after deliberately giving customers completely different products than what they reign up. Oh, you wanted a Big Mac? Too bad, here's a fish fillet. God, this is so annoying to see. You even got people saying stuff like, weebs realize the only reason they prefer subs is that it allows them to exoticize and fetishize a culture due to historical superiority complexes in cinema that is deeply rooted in racism, challenge level, impossible. So based on this buzzword salad, we've started to move away from translation discourse to subs and dubs discourse, which is honestly impressive in its own twisted way. Apparently, if you like subs, you're a racist. Well, guess I better put on the pointy ghost costume now. Maybe people like hearing sub voices better than dub voices and don't mind reading because they actually can read. Maybe people prefer subs over dubs for any other reason than the most nuclear option. Also, why are all of these arguments only for Japanese media? When Parasite and Squid Game came out, no one was complaining or debating about the fact that there were subs, as in no one used them for their culture wars. But every time some anime comes out and there's shitty dubs or translations, people will rally behind it to only chuds. Case in point, some dude brings up a good point about when translators or localizers insult fans and act all high and mighty, and that's why people hate them, only to get this incredibly dismissive tweet. Most translators are working on a deadline and have to deal with numerous external factors that have nothing to do with catering to you, buddy, or whatever woke agenda you think translators universally have. You are just blatantly putting words in people's mouths. At no point did this dude ever mention a woke agenda. He's even sympathizing with your original tweet where you say that translations are done by a team. But since you're so terminally online, you go full schizo and assume that he's against the woke agenda or something, when all he said was that you shouldn't insult fans and act all high and mighty. They also have a breakdown in the replies calling people Karens and entitled jerks like we as a consumer don't have a right to proper product. If you deliberately fuck up something that people pay money for, don't act surprised when people get upset and complain about it. Personally, I wouldn't be happy if the game I paid money for is completely fucked up. Why should we be content with the same thing happening in anime or manga? The next tweet we're going to talk about is someone saying the amount of angry weebs still mad at translators and localizers disrespecting the source material, and bro can't even read the source material. This statement is pretty funny because it is a blatant self-own. Imagine having your translations be so bad that someone who doesn't even speak the language can still tell that it sucks ass. It also doesn't help that these translators/localizers make them speak in terminally online internet slang, which is often a dead giveaway. Also, I like how this person said the quiet part out loud and basically admitted that translators and localizers disrespect the source material, but since people can't read Japanese, it's all good. No, it's not. You guys are paid to be as accurate as possible and not disrespect the source material, and if you can't do that, maybe this new AI translation can. One more tweet that I'm taking a look at reads, I tend to not listen to weirdos who get mad at localization because they are deeply uncultured weirdos who are just generally whack as hell and are mad that they can't escape seeing slang they reflexively hate in their animes. You mean the slang that isn't even remotely similar to the original message? Apparently it's uncultured to want to get people to do their actual jobs instead of spurging and making the dialogue sound like what a terminally online Twitter user would say. I would say that going out of your way to antagonize people by deliberately not doing your job properly is even more uncultured. Not saying that Japanese people can't talk in slang, by the way, just that they don't talk like they're a terminally online Twitter user. The last tweet that we'll cover reads, I think a lot of the people terminally angry at Japanese to English translators don't realize how different the two languages are. Some genuinely seem convinced that every single Japanese sentence can be rendered only one way into English, with every little nuance intact. While I do agree with this initial statement and agree that there are many phrases and words in many languages that lose much of their meaning once translated and not everything can be perfectly translated, this statement is kind of disingenuous at the same time because when people are complaining about poor translations, they're talking about how people will include unnecessary slang like sus, incel, or even poggers that isn't even remotely similar to how the original dialogue is. When these people are openly boasting and celebrating about freely changing the text to their whims, then it's no wonder why people are terminally angry at translators. They aren't doing their jobs properly and are proud that they won't. And for the part about certain stuff in one language being difficult to translate into another language, you can always add additional annotations in the subtitles or pages explaining the concept better. While you can say that would be too many words to read on TV, the times I've encountered additional annotations and needed to pause have been 0, and you can also pause if you're a slow watcher, worst case scenario. A prime example of ideal translation / localization was an episode of Ya Boy Koming where they translated a rap complete with cultural references into English at 1-to-1, even going so far as to make it rhyme, and they did it without obnoxious slang. Sure, that might have been hard, but your job isn't always going to be easy. Step up. While I have been very critical to translators and localizers through this video, I just want to make one thing clear. I don't hate most of them, and I think that most of them are just trying to do their jobs. Most localizers just mainly stick to minor grammar tweaks, and what most translators do is self-explanatory, but both should be faithful to the original text. However, there's clearly a very loud minority of them who blatantly change the source translation just because, and then when people obviously aren't happy because the translated result is nowhere even close to the original, they act all high and mighty online. Why even antagonize people for no reason? That only worsens things for you and generates ill will. Then we got people unable to recognize the fact that these objectively bad translations exist, and they try to make it into a culture war topic which makes other people untrustworthy of them and the translators / localizers. This tweet thread basically sums up how I feel overall about this whole situation. I don't think that most translators / localizers are under the influence of the woke mind virus or whatnot, and I feel bad that most of them are going to lose their jobs. But the loud minority on Twitter makes people lose a lot of goodwill towards them. But regardless of what you think, it appears that AI translation is going to stay for better or for worse. I just hope that the next translation / localization discourse happens around a French novel or Indian movie. Maybe switch it up a little from anime and manga. That's all I have to say. See ya. What do you know?